have 6 papers of 10 minutes each, plus 5 minutes discussion. Yeah, it's 90 minutes. Sorry?
And the format was changed. Maybe not everybody's aware of it.
So,
the idea was 5 minutes presentation.
Oh, 5 minutes?
Followed by, but I don't know if you really think that it's followed by small group discussions on this topic. We're not suggestion from last week or 2 weeks ago.
Did we receive that by email?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
So all the presentations go first, and then there's a getting together. Yeah, there should be like some kind of circuit. We could kind of rearrange the furniture.
Okay, let's do it. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Pierre Dilambour, and here is the format. We have 6 short talks of 5 minutes. Please be ready because we will go fast then, and then we have small group discussion. That's it?
Yeah.
It's good to have a leader, huh? Okay, so Jürgen Buda from Tübingen University is the first one, then David, you get ready.
On deck.
Okay, yeah, 5 minutes. So this will be a very brief reflection on the use of recommender systems in, for learning, and this is work conducted together with Christina Schwing. I start directly with our conclusions because we only have 5 minutes. We believe that recommender systems, which you probably know from commercial sites like Amazon's, can also be successfully used to support learning. However, we don't think that they can be transferred on a one-to-one basis from a commercial to an educational realm, and therefore they need to be redesigned. Yes. Okay, I'm ready. No, I'm not ready. Okay, good. Because we have identified 5 issues for redesign, which can be loosely grouped into redesign that address learners as recipients and redesign issues that address learners as producers of data from which a recommender system is feeded. Okay, the first issue. If a classical recommender system tries to find out whether people will like or not like a particular item, whereas an educational recommender system would rather have to find out whether a person would learn from a given item or not. So the solution that most authors here suggest is, because learnability is so much more difficult to diagnose than likability, and because learning is context dependent, is to introduce context awareness, for instance, through the use of ontologies and learner modeling. Second issue. Stuff that is consistent with your preferences. This is not necessarily a good thing for educational purposes, because in areas like critical thinking, you want to challenge your learners, or you want to confront them with all kinds of unexpected stuff, and therefore, actually we suggest to use the opposite and to use preference inconsistent recommendations, and we've done a lot of empirical work on this with quite interesting results. But I don't have the time. Third issue. This is a concept paper. Don't wait for effort values or something. Third issue. Amazon doesn't want to burden you. They want you to be fully concentrated on buying stuff, and therefore if they want to find out something about you and they track your behavior, they track your purchasing behavior or your browsing behavior. What we would rather suggest for educational scenarios, this method is called implicit elicitation. What we would suggest would be the opposite, namely explicit elicitation, for instance, through the use of ratings, because this is associated with all kinds of, involving learners is associated with all kinds of positive stuff, like participation in the community or reflection on the issue. So we would rather think that ratings are not a burden towards learning, but an opportunity for learning. Fourth issue, in the classical recommender systems, users are completely anonymous, whereas in the learning sciences, you rather want to instill some sense of group identity or some collaborative spirit. And the solution here would be to make the community more visible, for instance, by providing utility information. There are some really cool tools that show you how much benefit your rating will have to others. Okay, these are the 4 issues for individual learners. We also thought about one issue about group recommendation systems. To the best of our knowledge, nobody has ever yet developed a recommender system for collaborative learning groups, so this is highly hypothetical. But some people have already speculated about this, and their suggestion would be as follows. You start with a group, they deliberate on an issue, and then agree on a shared rating. And then they enter this rating, and from there on, the recommender system picks up and makes recommendations. Essentially treating the group as if it were a single person. However, our suggestion would be, again, quite different. We think that groups are good if they are diverse, or when they are diverse, so we would rather need recommender systems that harness this diversity. And our suggestion would be something like variance-based recommendations. What does it mean? Individuals enter their ratings as individuals, and then the recommender system recommends those items that created the greatest variance among these ratings in order to facilitate positive cognitive confidence. So, this is it all together. We want some context awareness, we want preference inconsistent recommendations, we suggest the use of explicit ratings, we think that the community should be made more visible, and if you deal with groups, maybe variance-based recommendations would be a good thing. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, my name is David, and I want to share with you my first and perhaps only foray into knowledge building and social network analysis. And the title of my paper was Support by Educators for Knowledge Building. You can see that in red. My research question is in blue. And there you go. And when I was reading about knowledge building, I saw that there are a lot of work been done with teachers and students and culture and teachers and students. A lot of this knowledge building work has been done on knowledge form and wikis. And in terms of the design, it tends to be very, I thought, prescriptive, contrived, and formal. That is, like, students had to do the stuff as part of their coursework. So I was like, okay, well, what happens if we can try to study knowledge building outside of these confines? Something that's organic and non-prescriptive. So this is outside people's formal responsibilities, perhaps in a school setting. Okay, there's discretionary membership and activity. So I studied this social network. It wasn't Facebook, but it was another group. And there were over 100 members from several countries. And there was a good mix of types of people. There weren't students involved, but there were teachers, administrators, other people. And they were preparing for some kind of pedagogical innovation. And there was a lot of epistemic agency. People had a lot of opportunities to use the different features to generate content, basically. Okay, so results. Out of the features of the social network, a lot of people use the text-based modality, the discussion forum. Over time, we saw that as time went on, people participated less in the social network. We can see some numbers here. We got 38 threads, about 100 words in every thread, per post, that is. And you can read that yourself. Discussion, you can see that. And we can see that there was actually a curious mix of the types of people that were participating in this group. And, this took a while to learn to do. We can see over here all the users in the network, and we can see that most of them did nothing. And then there were like several people who actually participated and contributed often. And then there are these two big ones, these two large nodes. All right? And using him as the baseline, we saw that there was only one person who could even get about 50% of his activity, all right, on the social network. And then these guys, about 17 people, had about 25% of his activity on the social network. And there was a curious mix of about 50% teachers, 33% administrators, and 17% support staff were participating here. And it seemed as if encoding these things, knowledge advancement as a community rather than individual achievement, that was that had the greatest number of instances of that theme in those posts in the discussion forum. Okay, finally, And what I noticed was online, when people are building knowledge, they tend to use text. And they don't use other means, such as video or photography or maybe just sound. Okay? Something else. I think something worth exploring is the idea of having a semi-permanent asynchronous channel for knowledge building. That is, when a lot of these experiments are run, they shut down eventually. Like you just stop running the experiment. Like people graduate, right? They leave school. So they're not using knowledge form anymore. They can't access it. So maybe something to think about is that on a social network, this can keep on going. And one of the important things is notifying people when content is generated. Centralized community. We saw that not many people actually, a core group of people participated in generating the knowledge, and this could perhaps be seen as like this expert team. And everyone else, well, why didn't they participate? That's something to think about. Why weren't so many people participating? Were there cognitive barriers, or was it the informality of the network? That is, it had a lot of discretionary activity. They could choose whether or not to participate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The speaker is Michael Eden from Virginia Tech. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. And I'd like to talk about some more priorities that combine analytical techniques with development of multi-touch working methods for PreK learners. So in the United States context, PreK means 3, 4, 5-year-old children. And this here is our team, and this is the director of the Child Development Center. This is Zach, and Elizabeth, and Ray, and Darren, and they're helping in the combinations of software development and also working with children. For example, over here, Elizabeth is actually an undergraduate mathematics student who is helping us understand how children work through these basic concepts of geometry. So, what we're trying to do here is sort of a very basic thing. We are looking at comparing both physical and virtual manipulatives, looking at how manipulatives themselves might contribute to the development of geometric thinking, mathematical thinking, and appropriate ways to teach young children, and then looking at how virtual types do the same, but also what advantages or affordances they may have. And we're looking at also, we're sort of targeting the social constraints that one might have. So with physical manipulative, oftentimes you have to impose social rules about who can participate when. And we're trying to slowly take that from social rules and the software to rules and roles. I'll show a little bit about that moving forward. And our theoretical framework here is that our use of manipulatives is recommended by, and this here refers to the National Council of Teachers in Mathematics, which is a U.S.-based sort of authority talking about how children should work through mathematical ideas. And also our focus is on children of that age, 3, 4, 5 years old, have a limited ability to mentally transform shapes. And what we'd like to do is create sort of a space where they can work with these in a shared fashion. What we did is we looked at sort of traditional means. Right now, what exists, we've got physical manipulatives that you can buy off the shelf. They're very easily accessible and accessible to the children. And what happens is that you can buy them off the shelf and they're readily available. Children work with them quite quickly. We're also looking at this here is a library of virtual manipulatives. That's sort of the next stage. And what we're trying to get at is sort of beyond that, sort of how we can perhaps combine the affordances and benefits of both physical and the virtual media to help each children understand mathematical ideas very well.
And so what's very important for us is this socio-cognitive dimension, that negotiation, collaboration, discussion is integral to the mathematical process here. And so that we want to, through our analyses, but also through our development practices, want to promote these efforts. And so what we did for research purposes, we were looking at what the children did with the physical manipulatives and then trying to move those into more clinical and experimental treatments. We came up with this idea of some different social constraints that were both, like I said, both verbally expressed, but also now can be expressed through software. So in terms of free ownership, this very much mirrors what happens in the physical world. If you just throw pieces on the table, the children can pretty much have at it because they're organized. And if there's one person of the group who's perhaps more forward, they might sort of use elbows and arms to block off who can have what. Divided ownership is where we're trying to get towards degrees of interdependence, where some parts of the negotiation can come into play. For the physical world, that has to be through a social constraint. If it's software embedded, we can sort of say who can touch what and when. And then single ownership very much mirrors the virtual world as it is now. So on the laptop, as you're using a mouse and keyboard, really only one person is sort of in control. You can be directed by others. Again, that can be overcome by somebody stealing a mouse or putting it in the keyboard. But what we're looking at is how you move from the physical to the virtual and the different social constraints that are affected. This is a very small study that and this is just a part of a larger study though, that we're working with children from a child development center on our campus. And again, for us, PreK is 3, 4, 5-year-old students. And that we basically took our technologies and our processes into the classroom and worked with the teachers and the children. And that's what we do. And this kind of shows we had what's called a smart table, that's in terms of smart technology, but this is a multi-touch surface that we use, and we had some set up in the terminating in the classroom. And these were the tangram puzzles that were developmentally appropriate, trying to find out how we move them progressively through understandings. These are the physical and virtual settings. And these are the social conditions that we set up, the rule cards and the role cards. The rules are very fundamental to tangrams as far as going outside the no overlapping, you go outside the line, use all 7 pieces. But then we wanted to introduce some role cue cards as well to help them engage the process. And this here is our arrangement that we took them through different physical and virtual puzzle pieces with the different constraints and the rules and the roles. And this here is our method of moving them through the problem space in terms of, after about 3 or 4 minutes, 3-year-olds start to get very frustrated if they don't have solutions, so we'll implement sort of levels of things for them. And again, these are paper-based that we're introducing, but then seeing how much we could develop into our software-based system. What I'm really excited about is our multimodal coding technique that we're using to try to understand how the children work through these processes, which was proposed by David McNeil at the University of Chicago and the McNeil Gesture Lab, and we're appropriating those techniques working with 20 students. And so we had Elizabeth and Baron working with students at our touch table surface. And here's our analytical scheme here that we're trying to work through what David refers to as object, meta, and parallel co-references, that when the children start to coordinate their ideas, we get a sense of them starting to come to an understanding. And this is the analytical frame that we're trying to use to understand how the children are working through these settings. This is the software that we use to go through these different tiered approaches to understanding children through, again, we're looking at talk, gesture, and gaze, these multimodal effects and sources of data. And this is just an example of when we're looking through it. We're using combination line, which is an open source software technique. We also use some more traditional Excel spreadsheets to give us some technical ideas. So again, we're focusing on these multimodal analytical techniques and the talk versus project talk. So the kids are focusing on content, but there's an organizational structure that we're calling project talk. And break out, I'll show you the video. I'm not going to show the table. It shows some of these kids working through their settings.
selber wieder entschuldigen bitte.
I do. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Next speaker is from Bochum University in Germany, Kai-Uwe Josef.
And do you remember the theme of this conference? It's connecting research to policy and practice. In fact, I'm going in the opposite direction. So I'm also working not only as a researcher, I'm also working as a teacher at university. And so I have to deal with practice and policy first, and then make up some research from that. So it has really required some trust and data protection on the one side, and how current implementation of learning management systems deal with it. So it's I think we come to the same conclusion like this video, so I think they should change something. So that's this one. Well, I should go. I could go through the diverse lists of regulations and all these kind of things. I would now, for this 5 minutes, just talk about two sites. This question was asked by one student who was telling a story about an incident at one class. So he told me that there was a student working with another student coming that he didn't do the assignment. I could see it from the exit diagram. So that's what comes up with what we call awareness functionality. So the teacher was aware that somebody wasn't reading the assignment. So is this okay? What would you say? Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. It depends. So my answer was I wish they would have implemented it differently, because it's not quite clear what is it for, these functionalities. Usually it's implemented showing all access to all the stuff there, all the PDF files, or everything is open there. And it's open usually only to the lecturer, not to anybody else. And so it's very tricky, and the question is, what is it really good for? So you have to think about what are the tasks of students or of teachers, and it also depends on the course itself. It's not only that it's not that you can compare one course to the other one. So if you question my answer to it, they should have implemented. You should come and discuss it with me. And if you want to know, if you're not questioning, but also want to know a little more, what are the arguments there, you can come and discuss it with me. So that's one thing. The other side is, well, stupid questions are asked elsewhere anyway. So why bother with the features of this discussion forums in these platforms? Because students don't discuss out there on Facebook or wherever. They all have their different faculties have their different places where they start discussing about the topics. But you as a tutor, as a teacher, you lose this valuable information. You always get asked those tricky questions, but not the simple, stupid ones. But you want to know which stupid questions they came up, because I didn't teach very well, so what information is missing. So first thing is that you lose this valuable information there. The second, well, why are they going to different places? Why are they not staying to the discussion forum, which is linked to all this valuable information in your course? Why are they discussing elsewhere? So one thing is that sometimes it's a little oversimplified relation between the tutors and the students, but it's getting more complex. So the teachers only want the best for their students, and you have the main, the friendly guide on their side. So that's what the teachers want, or that's what they want to do for the students. But teachers also grade. So if you ask the stupid questions, this may cause something for your grades. So the social relationships are a lot more complicated. I don't want to go into details there. So you can also come and discuss this with me a little more. So the paper also went through the problems of privacy for corporations, especially the point that you have different power relations. That's the thing that was in this slide here. And you have different, it's not that the usual systems like wikis or discussion forums are built for symmetrical relationships. So there is no force between the leaders of it. So everybody sees everything. So if you have a symmetrical relationship, that's okay. And on the web, it's all you have this symmetrical relationship. But if you have asymmetrical relationships, where somebody can penalize another one for kind of behavior, you have asymmetrical power relationships, and you should reflect this on building a system. And this is something that's I put in the paper. One approach to find solutions for that is going over general privacy principles like the guidelines. And I came up with a list of some approaches for maintaining trust using privacy and data protection implementations. So come and discuss it with me. You will have a discussion.
Thank you. Two more talks, I think, Matthew. Matthew Schmidt, and you will tell us where he's from.
University of Missouri. How about we have the other person?
Yeah, okay, fine.
So we are moving our university to another location, so I missed the email. And yeah, you didn't say this morning either.
You told me it was 10 minutes.
You didn't even know you were chair in this session.
That's right. Shut up. Okay, you have 2 minutes. 2 minutes extra.
Okay, I'm Frank de Jong from the University of Applied Science and Teacher Education in the Netherlands. Our story is actually about our struggling of teachers to find our optimized role as a teacher, as a knowledge building teacher in our master's program. And I skip this challenge because I don't have time for it. The question is actually, what do we do as a teacher that has an impact on the activities of the students? And there is style difference between the teachers, and do you find that back in what students actually do? And do you find it back in the interactions with students? And well, the most important thing I think are teacher activities is that prediction of student activities. But the most important thing, what we actually want to reach with our students, that they go from a belief mode of science, so using knowledge to design mode of learning, and which they have to do their knowledge workers and try to build their own teams and knowledge about things. So our method is quite developed. We are in the course of university session. So intervening less as possible, data were regulated from log files, teacher style, mixing by knowledge building principles and the natural business of teachers. Students follow 3 teams. It's a year program, technical program. We only look at 1 year. Team development from September to December. Education psychology, learning science, January half April. Social science from April to July. Students.
about 28 to 75. Most have a really vocational schools background. Or they work in the nursing schools, or they have their own companies, or they are education advisors. 2/3 were female, and they were spread all over the Netherlands. Very small country, but still. Knowledge creation takes place in the knowledge forum, but also in face-to-face meetings. We come together once a month on Friday from 9 p.m. to 9 p.m. and on Saturday morning from 9 p.m. to 12. The teachers, they start from the knowledge building principles of Maria, and you see that they have, from the personal style, they give some action to more action to some of the knowledge building principles. First teacher is giving more action for working from out of the ideas of the students, giving more students agency. But usually after 4 months asked for more structure, and that was quite adapted to the style of the second teacher, who was more giving structure, building on students' notes, suggesting links, and the third teacher at the end of the year, he was even much more directly into the community of students by very active building on students' notes and referring and creating links in the notes. So, in order to the measurements, we saw that there is a difference in the teacher activities, especially on reading students' activity notes and on building and referring. And that's actually an interaction effect, in which you see that that if the teacher is active, is in charge of his theme, active teaching, you see that the activity is the highest. But there's also a nice picture that the first teacher is actually decreasing their activity during the year. The second teacher has kind of baseline, the very active when there's a teaching role. And the third teacher actually during the year is building his strengthening his activity with the students. And this is also a significant interaction between the students' notes and build on and reference to students' notes. And you see that it's actually contrasting the third teacher with the first two teachers building on the students' notes. So that is interesting. The results that students activity very strong order, especially reading each other's notes, very active knowledge building activity, and there's also an interaction over the themes that might be related to the teacher's style of coaching the students, especially in using keywords. This is going down, like sports teams, and creating references is also increasing. Here somewhere. Well, that's interesting, but it looks like it has a relation. So in order to try to find out that, we carried out some stepwise multiple regression for each team period, the dependent variable, the total student activity team, and independent teacher reading and build on the referring activities. And you would expect that in the first model, the team teacher of team 1 would be in the model, but he isn't. The team teacher 2 is in the model, and especially the reading of the activity of him. In the second team, you see the same picture, but not the first or the second teacher who is actually active in this team. The third teacher who will do the next team is actually in the model. And only at the third pedagogical period, there the team teacher who was the most active, the most in the community, is in the model, and especially with reading activities, students know and their own activities. If you look to your social network analysis, then you see that the density is actually going down through the year. There's a bit going down in the read level, but it goes up when teachers become more active. The enrollment raise up, and also the level of reference is going up. This doesn't anything say if students really come into the negotiation and the dialogue with students, so to doing knowledge creation. So we did some qualitative analysis on some of the students' conversations, especially from students who had a high ego-centric density social network. We did some proposition analysis, keywords related to the themes, social affective regulative remarks, and also if their contributions came from their own experience. Are you pointing out? What are you doing here? Yeah, the results. So that's kind of positive analysis. And we see that this is in the more intensive feature assessment. We see more knowledge creation, more community knowledge creation. We see different sort of things. So conclusions, teach relate actually to non-prescriptive principles. Actual activity depends on being in charge of the themes. Choose ability activities vary across themes. CSCL are not very well produced by teach activities. And discourse analysis actually reveal the difference that not the quantitative should say that there is a lowering in the knowledge creation, but actually looking at what people are saying, you see that there is an increase of knowledge creation in this community. And I would close down that the teacher role is an important thing to focus on.
Okay. So while he's setting up, so remind you the organization. After that, we will have, tell me if I'm wrong, we will have the speakers around the room in different places, and you go and choose one speaker and have a discussion with him for 15 minutes, and then after 15 minutes we say rotation, and then you change speaker. We will do 3 rotations. There is about 45 minutes left. That's okay? That sounds Catholic? Yeah. Now?
Okay, it worked this time. Great. Matthew Schmidt from University of Missouri. I'm going to talk a little bit about some research we're doing there with some youth on the autism spectrum. What we did is, and I'm going to move very quickly here, we took a look at a social competence curriculum that's used in a face-to-face course, and one of the core components of Asperger's and autism spectrum disorders is a lack of social competence. It's kind of one of the 3 of what's known as a triad of impairment. There was a desire to deliver this instruction broadly using highly trained instructors, and so we began looking at 3D virtual learning environments technology to deliver this social competence instruction at a distance. Here's just a screenshot to kind of orient you to what it is we're doing. Some of the justification for it, there's a lot of information about these purported benefits of using 3D VLE technologies with this particular user demographic, but there's not a lot of research to support this. There's some preliminary research, I'd say probably a handful of studies, maybe 7. Almost all of them focus on a single user experience. So we got some funding and we built this environment that we call iSocial. And one of the things that a lot of people kind of have a hard time wrapping their heads around is, how are you doing social competence instruction using a computer? Doesn't that kind of remove the social experience that these kids need, A, and B, working with kids on the autism spectrum is it even possible for them to interact in a social manner? And these are great questions, and they're questions that there isn't really an answer to right now. So the research that I did is very preliminary in this respect. Instead of making the assumption that many of the other researchers in this field have done, which is, this is going to work, which in my opinion is more wishful thinking than empirical research, I took the assumption that this isn't going to work. So why don't we validate one or the other of the hypotheses? So I took a look at to what extent do the youth engage in appropriate interaction, and to what extent do they engage in inappropriate behavior, and what's the nature of their interaction. Now, I had a very specific demographic. I was looking at 4 youth from 11 to 14 years old. We also had a number of measures that we took, IQ, capable of speech, capable of reading. I used 2 counterbalanced groups for lessons over 2 weeks. This is a unit on turn taking. And we also used Elan. Someone else said I can feel your pain. We use that as well for coding our data. I use a single subject research design. This is a semi-empirical type of design that's used for low incidence populations, such as individuals on the autism spectrum, people with cognitive impairments, etc. And we developed a coding scheme to look at these reciprocal interactions. Now we can get into some data. This is one of probably 200 graphs that we created in order to compare students' interaction across the lessons that they did. So what we see here is one lesson that the students engaged in. These lessons had kind of extrinsic context built in, so they had starting activities, introduction of the skill, then modeling of the skill, they do some practice activities, and then finish up with some finishing activities. This was the same structure across all units and across all lessons. Within that, what we did is we tracked students' initiations, responses, and continuations. So this was a type of a discourse analysis of their interactions, and the interactions were then measured by initiation, so starting a conversation, a response to that initiation. Typically, students with autism, that's about as far as it goes. I, as an instructor, initiate, you respond in the conversation. That's kind of a very common trait of discourse with this population. Continuations are kind of a special case because they're a response to a response. That's what we want to see, is we want to see continual discourse. We also tracked inappropriate behaviors. We tracked a number of inappropriate behaviors, and of these, there was one that emerged as the dominant inappropriate behavior, and that was interruption. One thing that we didn't do is we didn't distinguish between overlaps, which is, in any sort of a computer-mediated communication environment, you're going to have overlaps because you don't get all the visual cues that you do in face-to-face. But what you do end up getting is, so we see a high incidence of interruption, whereas that may not actually be the case. So, we can kind of see this tracked over time, but in the background we can also see the mode of interaction that the students are using. So speaking, using textual affordances, using avatar affordances as well, and then things that didn't fit into the interaction model. And I'll finish up here very quickly. I also found that the dominant interaction mode was a response. The dominant mode of interaction was verbalization, and that was across the board. So typically, students are responding verbally with occasional interruptions. This is also mirrored in other research on reciprocal interaction, and this is from the real world, where we see much more response than initiation, and predominantly appropriate social interaction. So what does this all mean? Well, this shows that 3D VLEs may indeed have potential to, these purported benefits may actually be realizable in these. It provides some foundational support for future research. That's where we're at right now. And it also provides some social validity to what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, so now, as I said, we make groups. So if you want to talk about privacy, you go with Kai. About autism, you come here with Matthew. Recommender system, multi-touch interaction there. And here we have the knowledge building corner with two knowledge building persons. So we make groups for 15 minutes.
I will just join you.
Okay?
I will just join you.
So please join
Might relay what you did. I will go there. There looks great.
Yeah.
Let's make this up.
You are heavily into knowledge building. I just did this once, and I'm not sure. My research area, in fact, is not in this area. Hi.
These are people of mine.
Oh, really? Hi.
Master teachers.
Oh, cool. Hanukkah. It's like the Jewish holiday, Hanukkah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Leah.
Leah.
Leah. I'm also
David.
a teacher in the...
Oh, this is amazing. You guys can memorize. It's like, this is like trying to remember Chinese language. It just seems so unfamiliar.
summarize again what the main conclusions are about the findings of the
I didn't have any conclusions. I just had some discussion. I was like, too short for conclusions. What was I? Well, it seemed that people were using text a lot on the social network. There's a Ning network. It wasn't the knowledge form. It was like something called Ning, which is a social network.
Ning?
Ning.
I think I know it.
Ning.com. So, Ning is a social network, and you can create your own social network. It's like Facebook, but these are private. So you can create your own social network, and then people can join. And you can make it public, so anyone can join, or you have to like ask the administrator to join.
What are the facilities?
There are.
Because you connected to knowledge building.
Yeah.
Creation.
Yes.
What kind of features are Facebook?
Let's see. Where are some examples? Goodness. Creative control. Learn more. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find an example. I'm sorry, guys. You can post videos, photos. There's a discussion forum. You can create events. There's a calendar. You can set up small groups, like discussion groups, within the Ning as well.
Are the students all making their own Ning website, or are you, as a teacher, making one Ning website and students are...
You can have one Ning website, like a group.
Okay.
But then within this group, each person can have their own page. So you can create your own content, and that will go onto your page and will also go onto the group. So, how do I even... where are these examples? So, that was about it.
But this, yeah.
Those projects was working on administrators, teachers,
Yes.
and diversity of functions.
Yes, these were a lot of people. And that was really special too, because I'd never before seen such a diverse group of educators gathered together informally outside their official roles just to talk about this innovation, which was introducing laptops, like one-to-one laptop programs in schools. So we're trying to build knowledge about this. And so that was special.
The connection between the members was how can we use the laptop, the program on our own laptop, and how can we learn from each other to using that guide or the program.
Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of discussions related to one-to-one laptop programs in schools. So that's what unified all of these people. I'm sure you could actually find it if you want. You just Google search it. But I know I shouldn't be saying this, but yeah, you can just find it that way. Yeah. So it seemed like people had a preference for using text, and people rarely use the videos and the photos and stuff. In fact, only one person posted all of the photos on the group. But there was significant discussion. Knowledge building discussion on the discussion forum.
But they needed each other with the collaborative learning in it. They needed each other to succeed the project or the installation of the program, or can they also do it by their own?
They can do it on their own because these aren't actually people part of one school. These are just people pulled from all over the world. In fact, from several countries who just joined this group, who are interested in one-to-one laptop programs. So what they do in their schools is their own business. They just came here to kind of develop this idea of how can we best implement this innovation.
But why did you choose for the knowledge building principles?
I just wanted to experiment, that's all. I just applied it to the social network.
Why did you knowledge building principles?
This thing.
Only 6.
Yeah, I was reading this paper. And in this paper, Scardamelli and Bereiter enumerate these 6 themes. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I could code according to that. I mean, again, I don't really know much about knowledge building, for which reason I was just like, just trying something.
And how did you code it?
Yeah, that's also my question, because the principles,
Yes.
What do you see?
Well, see that.
And how do you correlate?
Yes, I think this was very subjective, and you know, just to.
But that doesn't mind, but it's still interesting if you can tell how you code it, what kind of things you saw in these notes.
Okay,
Because
okay.
we're doing actually the same, and we are struggling with it.
Let me show you. So I would read every post, and there would be some discussion like this, and yeah, let me read it for you. Hello. Looks like, and this was in response to a discussion on internet safety. Looks like we all seem to be moving in a similar sort of direction with this. I've said before on another forum that we are already addressing issues of digital citizenship, and is the phrase that I think best describes this whole area of interaction. You rightly addressed the point that, etc. I'd really be happy to work with you on this, to be honest, so that we can develop some materials together, etc. Maybe we could do some inter-school activity. So, you know, in seeing these kinds of things, I would be able to say, okay, it's this, this, or this, just based on the descriptors of the 6 themes.
And what did you find in that? Which of the principles did you recognize in this?
I don't remember. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, it's.
If you had 6, maybe you could look at the 6 and decide which one it is.
Knowledge advancement as a community rather than individual achievement. I could perhaps say, you know, I could say there was definitely some kind of entreaty there. Yeah. Knowledge advancement as idea improvement rather than progress toward true or warranted belief.
And what are these columns?
Oh, what are these?
What does that refer to?
Oh goodness, discussion topic. Oh, these were 8 topics.
Okay.
8 topics.
Oh, the discussion topic.
Yeah. Knowledge building themes. Okay. Yeah. I'm not. I'm sorry if I'm not much more of a help. I don't know too much about it.
Yes, you are, because you are like you take the same manner of coding as we are doing, and we are pursuing with it. So it's weird.
Yes, it's hard.
But it's also good to see that people are working in another environment and still can find such knowledge-building principles in their conversation. So that strengthens our idea that you don't need a knowledge form for it.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of principles actually are embedded in the facilities.
Yes.
Like a rising above, or that's a real physical facility in the environment.
Yes.
So that helps people to do these kinds of idea improvements.
Yes.
So that's why I'm interested also in what kind of facilities actually, which could be related to these principles are there in this environment.
Yeah, I really want to show you guys. Oh goodness, Ning. Let's see if we can get you a Ning website. Ning catering, about Ning, Crunchbase. Ning. Seatning. Okay, let's see if this. Okay. So here we just found a social network here, and on this social network we have people's pages and members. Okay, well, I need to actually get permission to use this. But we have events. Different kinds of events, videos about us, pages. Okay, let's take a look over here. Seems like there are different modules here, and these kinds of things. Activity here. Sorry.
And you took data from the forum, or?
Yeah, I took data from the forum. I mean, from the forum feature here. So the other website that I used had a forum here, and then there are blog posts here as well. It seems like there's a lot of activity on this one.
Are you known with Knowledge Forum also?
No, I've actually never used Knowledge Forum before.
You have never used
I just no. I just
So comparison is difficult then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just know that basically almost all the research on knowledge building takes place on knowledge form, and I'm like, why? Because it's not necessarily the technology, right? It's just the principles that can be applied to all sorts of things.
Yeah, but technology is developed on the principles.
Yes.
So that's why knowledge form is
Yes.
used, I think, in most cases.
But it's actually a blended form. It's also the face-to-face meetings and the form, because also, well, you do knowledge building also by reflecting on the notes in the face-to-face meetings actually.
Yeah.
So that's, but I think you could do the same in any environment.
Yes.
But until now, if you hear the real knowledge builders community, well, they are still. However, I know that several people from the community are building their own environment. For instance, I was talking this afternoon with Jim Hewitt, and he built his own environment in which there is more adapted also for courses. He would like to show it.
Adapted more?
Well, yeah, there is an organizer, you know, and a calendar, and you can put post-its, messages, a kind of chat. So that actually several other functionalities like chatting and emailing and planning the events is actually taking out of the knowledge building conversation. Now you see that in this knowledge form everything takes place. Or you have to say you use the chat and you use this, but only for knowledge creation you use. But people are, that's confusing, because then people do have too much tools which they won't have to use for actually. They want a supermarket. Everything under one roof, you know? And the knowledge from the moment is not really suitable for that. It's not a chat environment.
Yes.
It's not an email environment. It's not an organizer.
It's not very social in the sense of Web 2.0 social.
No, not in that sense. It's social in the sense of knowledge building community.
Yeah, very focused.
Yeah, very focused. Yeah. So in that sense, it might be an update, but it needed an update. On the other hand, the facilities who are really connected to the knowledge building principles, I didn't see them in any other environment. So that's.
According to the original script, you should know rotate, but the script failed because of the lack of the participants. So you do whatever you want. You move. There is no script anymore.
Yeah, I feel like the knowledge building principles could really be applied to Web 2.0 technology. I mean, the stuff that Ed Chi was talking about today, including like social highlighting, I think is really applicable. A lot of the things that we see on the knowledge form could be found in other tools. It's just, I think, recognizing that and running research into that.
Yeah, there's I don't know if it is then in other tools a difficulty to collect the data.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Provided to students for formative assessments, like how is my knowledge building doing?
Yeah.
I don't know if you need a database which is not open.
That's a very good point. I mean, that's the real issue, right?
Yeah.
When you apply knowledge building to the school setting and constraints that a school has, you have to respect people's privacy.
Yeah.
You also need to centralize information for assessment. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Text-based modality, and I guess from your explanation you mean that there are other possibilities for exchange of information, but they exclusively use text.
Sure. Yes. I mean, like we could share on this social network by like filming each other. They don't. They're just using the discussion forum. I mean, like we could upload videos.
Why not upload?
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Why not?
Upload films.
Yeah.
Upload videos. It's just text-based.
Yeah, it's just text-based discussion. You know, it wasn't like a YouTube video of themselves talking or sharing something. This was just exclusively discussion forum. Let's not use the videos or any other kind of modality.
You can upload pictures, but it's not really fancy for that.
Why not?
Well, it is possible. You can put links in it.
But why do the students don't use that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
but
didn't the participants use it?
I don't know.
That's the most curious thing.
Yeah.
But maybe they're-
Nowadays the students also only use text.
yeah.
Lots form is not that functional to use to
Yes.
upload videos, but it is possible. They never do it.
And if it's too heavy, then it becomes unstable.
Yeah.
Interesting. But I know that Carl and Marlene are in the group. They were, I think, for 6 years ago or something like that. There were discussions about building, or maybe to go in the wiki environment, because wiki is also knowledge creation,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
It wouldn't be suitable and knowledge building. But they didn't progress on that.
Not using wikis.
Well, there is a wiki about knowledge building, but
Why didn't they?
I don't know. Maybe because they find the principle are not very well built in. That's probably the argument of Carl Barrett mostly.
Is this your first time to Hong Kong?
My second time, your first time.
Welcome.
You're from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's my home now. I've been here since 2003.
Okay. But you are not connected to Nancy Law, or
Nancy just asked me to do everything.
Huh?
She just asked me to do everything.
Okay. Okay.
She asked me to
So
MC.
you are in our group.
Yeah. She's not my supervisor. She's the head of the center. I think she's the head of a division in which I'm subsumed.
Okay.
So I'm in the information technology division. So I think she's in charge of that. This is her big baby, and she asked me to MC on like Friday or something. I'm like, okay, I'll MC and just run around. I'm supposed to like do social media as well. I need to tweet and film everything. I'm really not like paying attention half the time. I have to like monitor all the social media.
Okay. So what is your impression? What's at the moment the best social media environment for that people are really talking about something? Not just chatting, but really talking about something. Where can you find that?
Deeper level.
Dialogue instead of changing information.
Is it LinkedIn? Because it's a more professional network.
I think LinkedIn is used more for just meeting people. You know, I think the deeper conversations can often happen in like comments, you know, like the comments section.
Yeah, but there's also a discussion form going on.
Yeah, it's like a discussion.
Maybe not in an open source. Learning is so
Yeah.
but the discussions are also more exchange. I found this and you found it.
If you look on April's side, there are real discussions.
Yes. Maybe real discussion happens in emails. Because
That's an awful environment too for discussion.
yes, it is. It's an awful one.
I always get lost of track when it's in my email to go on.
It's emails are crazy.
Discussions are more exchanging points of view. And I can see many discussions on open source.
Yeah.
The dialogue is different.
Maybe. I mean, again, with iPhones and things, we can find the real dialogue on, like, you guys have iPhones?
No, we are not here. We're from the Netherlands. We're not
We
from
can,
Hong Kong.
Let me shut this off.